Admiral John Kane stood in front of the large screen on his ship's bridge. The screen showed what was left of New Hope Colony. 3 days ago, it was home to 45,000 humans. Now it was nothing but black dirt and broken metal pieces. Scattered everywhere, the colony had been a beautiful place. Green fields stretched for miles. Children played in parks while their parents worked in the fields and factories. It was supposed to be humanity's bright future among the stars. Now it looked like hell itself had visited. Captain Maria Torres walked up to the Admiral. Her face was pale and her hands shook slightly. She had been the first to see the recordings. From the attack. "Sir, we have finished looking at all the data from the colony," she said in a quiet voice. There were no survivors, none at all. Kane felt his heart sink. He had hoped that maybe some people had escaped to the underground shelters. Maybe the children at least had made it out alive. But the alien ships had been very careful. They had made sure nothing lived. How long did the attack last? Kane asked. 14 minutes, sir. The alien fleet came out of hyperspace at 0800 local time. By 0814, everything was destroyed. Torres handed him a datapad. They used plasma bombs. Each one was strong enough to melt stone. They dropped over 300 of them. Kane looked at the numbers on the screen. 300 bombs for one small colony. It was like using a hammer to kill an ant. The aliens had not just wanted to destroy New Hope. They had wanted to make sure it could never be rebuilt. Commander David Blake joined them. His uniform was wrinkled and his eyes were red from lack of sleep. He had been working for 3 days straight, trying to make sense of what happened. "Admiral, we got a message from the aliens after they finished bombing," Blake said. "They sent it on all frequencies so everyone in the system could hear it." "What did they say?" Blake pressed a button on his datapad. The bridge speakers came alive with a cold, mechanical voice speaking in perfect English. "This is Fleet Commander Vex of the Galactic Hegemony. The human pest colony on this world has been successfully eliminated. This is the price for refusing to leave our territory. Humans are a disease in our galaxy. We will cure this disease completely." The message ended. The bridge was silent except for the soft hum of the ship's engines. Every person there knew what those words meant. This was not a military battle between two armies. This was something much worse. Kane walked over to the big window that looked out into space. Stars filled the black sky, looking peaceful and calm. But he knew that peace was a lie now. Somewhere out there, alien ships were planning to kill more humans. "Sir," Torres said, "New Hope was the 4th colony they have hit in 2 months. Before that, it was Garden World, then Silver Falls, then Bright Star. Each time they killed everyone." Kane remembered each of those colonies. Garden World grew food for 12 other human settlements. Silver Falls mined rare metals that Earth needed badly. Bright Star was where young families went to start new lives. All gone now. All turned to ash and dust. "Have we heard anything from Earth Command?" Kane asked. Blake nodded. "They want us to pull back all human ships to the inner colonies. They think we should try to make peace with the hegemony." "Peace?" Kane almost laughed, but there was no humor in it. They just killed 45,000 innocent people. What kind of peace do they think is possible now? For 50 years, humans had tried to be good neighbors in the galaxy. When other alien races complained about human colonies being too noisy, humans moved farther away. When aliens said human ships were too ugly, humans changed their designs. When aliens wanted humans to pay special taxes just for being human, humans paid them without complaint. Every time human leaders said the same thing: "We must be patient. We must show them we are civilized. We must prove we can be trusted." Kane had believed in that approach. He had spent his whole career following orders to avoid fights, to always try talking first, to never use force unless there was no other choice. He had been proud of humanity's peaceful reputation, But now he was looking at the burned remains of children's toys floating in space around New Hope. He was reading reports of families who had been killed while eating breakfast. He was listening to alien voices calling his species a disease that needed to be cured. "Sir," Torres said carefully, "there is something else. Our spy satellites picked up hegemony fleet movements. They are gathering ships near the Altair system." Kane knew what that meant. Altair had 6 human colonies with over 2 million people total. If the hegemony attacked there with the same force they used on New Hope, it would be a massacre beyond imagination. "How many ships do they have?" Kane asked. "At least 400 warships, sir. Maybe more. Our entire fleet has only 200 ships, and most of those are cargo vessels with light weapons." The numbers made Kane's stomach hurt. In a fair fight, humanity would lose badly. But Kane was starting to think that fair fights were a luxury. Humans could no longer afford. His communication officer looked up from her station. "Admiral, we are getting calls from all the outer colonies. They want to know if they should evacuate." Kane thought about that. Millions of humans running away from their homes, leaving behind everything they had built. Children growing up in refugee camps instead of playing in their own backyards. Families torn apart by fear and uncertainty. The aliens wanted humans to run. They wanted to scare humanity so badly that they would leave the galaxy voluntarily. It would be easier than hunting down every human settlement one by one. "Sir?" Torres was waiting for his answer. Kane looked at his officers. These were good. People who had followed him for years. They trusted him to make the right choice. But what was the right choice when there were no good options left? He thought about all the human colonies scattered across dozens of star systems. Farmers and teachers and doctors and engineers who had come to the stars looking for a better life. They did not deserve to die just because some aliens thought humans did not belong in space. Kane walked back to his command chair and sat down. Slowly, he looked at the screen showing New Hope's ruins one more time. Then he made his decision. "Send a message to all human ships and colonies," he said in a clear, strong voice. "Tell them we are activating Emergency War Protocol 7. All civilian ships are to report to the nearest military base for conversion. All colonies are to begin building defensive positions." His officers looked surprised. Emergency War Protocol 7 had never been used before. It was written for the worst possible situation humanity could face. "And send another message to Earth Command," Kane continued. "Tell them Admiral Kane respectfully refuses the order to retreat. We tried being civilized for 50 years. It did not work. Now we try something else." General Robert Ross walked through the underground tunnels on Earth's moon. The tunnels were new, built in just 3 months since Admiral Kane's message reached Earth. Above him, the surface of the moon looked the same as always, below ground. Everything had changed. The tunnels were full of people working day and night. Engineers in dirty uniforms ran between machines that never stopped running. Scientists studied computer screens showing weapon designs that had not been used for decades. Workers carried metal and supplies from one section to another without stopping to rest. "General, you need to see this," Dr. Lisa Martinez called out. She was the head scientist for Project Iron Fist, humanity's secret weapon program. Ross followed her to a large window that looked down into a huge underground factory. Below them, hundreds of workers were taking apart civilian spaceships and rebuilding them into something very different. "We have converted 60% of our civilian fleet so far," Martinez explained. "Every cargo ship, every passenger liner, every mining vessel. The aliens expect us to fight like them, with big warships shooting at each other from far away. They will not expect what we are building." Ross watched as workers removed the comfortable passenger seats from a luxury space liner. In their place they installed racks of missiles. The ship's elegant dining rooms were being filled with ammunition. The beautiful observation decks now held large guns that could punch holes through enemy armor. These ships look harmless from the outside, Martinez continued. But inside, they are more dangerous than any military warship. The aliens will not know what hit them until it is too late. A young captain named Sarah Lee approached them. She wore the new uniform of the Terran Defense Corps, a military unit that had not existed 4 months ago. "General, we have a problem," Captain Lee said. "We have more volunteers than we can use. Every day, more people come asking to join the fight." Ross was not surprised. Every human in the galaxy had heard about New Hope and the other destroyed colonies. Families who had lost relatives in the attacks wanted revenge. Young people who had grown up hearing stories about humanity's peaceful nature now wanted to prove they could fight when necessary. "What kind of volunteers?" Ross asked. "Everyone, sir. Farmers who want to learn how to fly fighter ships. Teachers who want to become soldiers. Even grandparents who say they are too old to run but not too old to shoot." Ross nodded. He had seen the same thing on every human world. People who had never thought about war were now studying military tactics. Children who had played peaceful games were now learning how to operate weapons. Humanity was changing, and it was changing fast. Dr. Martinez led them to another section of the factory. Here, workers were building something that looked like large metal eggs with engines attached. "These are penetrator pods," she explained. "Each one carries a single soldier and enough supplies for a week-long mission. They are designed to be launched from cargo ships and land on enemy planets without being detected." Ross picked up one of the helmets the soldiers would wear. It was black and had no decorations or bright colors. Everything about it was designed to be scary rather than beautiful. "The aliens think humans are soft because we prefer peace," Martinez said. "They are about to learn that preferring peace and being unable to fight are two very different things." Captain Lee handed Ross a data pad with reports from human colonies across the galaxy. "Sir, the outer settlements are ready. The aliens think they have pushed us back to our home systems, but we have been hiding supplies and weapons all over the frontier." Ross read the reports. On worlds the aliens thought were empty, human engineers had built secret bases deep underground. On asteroids that looked worthless, humans had hidden weapons that could destroy entire fleets. In space stations that appeared to be abandoned, human soldiers waited for orders to attack. For 50 years, humans had explored every corner of the galaxy. They had learned how to survive in places other races thought were impossible to live in. They had built homes on worlds with poisonous air and deadly storms. Now all that knowledge was being used for a different purpose. "What about our allies?" Ross asked. Captain Lee's face became angry. "The Centauri Republic says they are deeply concerned, but will not help unless the Galactic Council approves military action. The Vegan Trade Alliance wants to hold peace talks. The Altarian Federation offered to negotiate a surrender agreement for us." Ross felt his hands form fists. For decades, these same alien races had been happy to trade with humans, to buy human food and human technology, to let humans do the dangerous jobs that other species did not want to do. But now when humans needed help, these allies were nowhere to be found. "They are afraid," Dr. Martinez said quietly. "They know that if they help us, the hegemony will target them next. It is easier to let us die alone than to risk their own safety." Ross understood. Politics in the galaxy had always been about protecting yourself first. The strong species bullied the weak ones, and everyone else stayed quiet to avoid becoming targets. Humans had always been the new species, the ones everyone else looked down on, but that was changing now. In secret factories across human space, workers were building weapons that would make the galaxy's strongest military forces look like children playing with toys. Humans had learned technology from every race they had met, and now they were combining all of it into something new and Terrifying. "How long until we are ready?" Ross asked. 6 more weeks, Martinez replied. "By then, every civilian ship will be converted, every soldier will be trained, and every weapon will be in position." Ross walked to another window that looked out at the Earth hanging in space above them. The blue and green planet looked peaceful and beautiful. It was hard to believe that the people living on that quiet world were now preparing for the largest war in galactic history. "General," Captain Lee said, "there is one more thing. We intercepted a hegemony communication. They are planning to attack the Altair colonies in 2 months. They want to kill another 2 million humans." Ross felt cold anger fill his chest. The aliens were not satisfied with destroying small colonies anymore. Now they wanted to kill millions of people at once. They wanted to show the entire galaxy what happened to species that refused to disappear quietly. "Then we will be ready." "In time," Ross said. "Send word to Admiral Kane. Tell him Operation Steel Rain will begin in 45 days. Around them, the work continued. Humans who had spent their lives building peaceful colonies were now building instruments of war. Scientists who had created technologies to help people were now designing weapons to destroy enemies. Teachers and farmers and doctors were learning how to become soldiers. The galaxy had taught humanity that being civilized was not enough to survive. Now humanity was going to teach the galaxy what happened when civilized people decided to stop being civilized. Admiral Kane stood on the bridge of his flagship, the TDF Revenge. Around him, 300 human ships hung in space at the edge of the hegemony home system. Most of the ships looked like ordinary cargo vessels and passenger liners. The aliens would never guess what was hidden inside them. Kane looked at the tactical display showing the enemy fleet. 500 hegemony warships were arranged in perfect formation around their home planet. Their ships were massive and beautiful, with smooth curves and bright colors that showed off their advanced technology. "Sir, we are receiving a transmission from the enemy fleet," reported Communications Officer Amy Wright. "Put it on screen," Kane ordered. The main display showed Fleet Commander Vex of the Galactic Hegemony. He was a tall, thin creature with purple skin and 4 arms. His uniform was covered with medals and decorations that showed his high rank. "Primitive humans," Vex said with obvious amusement in his voice. "You have traveled very far from your little corner of the galaxy. Your small fleet cannot possibly defeat our mighty forces. Surrender now, and we will kill you quickly instead of slowly." Kane stepped forward so the alien could see him clearly. "This is Admiral Kane of the Terran Defense Forces. You made a mistake when you decided to murder our children. You made a bigger mistake when you thought we would just run away. Today you learn what humans do when someone threatens our families." Kane cut the transmission without waiting for a reply. He turned to his weapons officer. "Begin Operation Steel Rain." Across the human fleet, cargo bay doors opened. Instead of trade goods or passengers, the ships released thousands of small objects that spread out across the star system like a deadly cloud. To the hegemony sensors, they looked like harmless debris or maybe emergency pods from damaged ships. Fleet Commander Vex was not worried. His ships moved forward in the standard battle formation that had won every war for the last 200 years. The hegemony had the biggest guns, the strongest shields, and the most advanced technology in the galaxy. These humans with their converted cargo ships would be destroyed in minutes, but the small objects the human ships had released were not debris. They were hunter-killer drones, each one no bigger than a person, but packed with enough explosives to destroy a warship. The drones had been designed by human miners who knew how to break apart the hardest asteroids. Now they were going to break apart something else. The first wave of drones reached the hegemony fleet before anyone realized what was happening. They attached themselves to the alien ships like metal parasites and began cutting through the armor with industrial laser cutters. Within seconds, Explosions began blooming across the enemy formation. "What is happening?" Fleet Commander Vex shouted at his officers. Where are these attacks coming from? But his officers had no answers. The human fleet was still far away, too far to be shooting at them. The small objects their sensors had dismissed as harmless were now tearing his ships apart from the inside. "Admiral." Kane watched the battle display with cold satisfaction. "Phase 2, he ordered. Suddenly, the space around the hegemony fleet came alive with hidden dangers. Cargo containers that had been floating in the system for months opened up to reveal missiles, asteroids that looked natural split apart to show gun batteries inside. Space stations that appeared abandoned suddenly powered up and began shooting. For 6 months, human supply ships had been visiting this system on regular trade runs. Each time, they had left behind a few extra containers or made minor repairs to space stations. The hegemony had never bothered to inspect these activities carefully. Humans were just traders and miners after all. They were not a military threat. Now those trade containers were revealing their true purpose. Each one was packed with enough firepower to level a city. The space stations that humans had been repairing were now fortress bases with weapons that could reach anywhere in the system. "Sir, enemy fleet is down 30%, reported Tactical Officer Jim Brown. "Their command ship is requesting assistance from the planetary defense grid." Kane nodded. "Begin Phase 3. On the planet below, hegemony civilians were watching the battle in shock. Their mighty fleet was being destroyed by converted cargo ships and hidden weapons. It was impossible, but it was happening right in front of their eyes. Then the lights began going out. For months, human engineers had been working as maintenance staff on the planet's power systems. They had offered to upgrade the old equipment with new, more efficient designs. The hegemony had been happy to let the primitive humans do the boring technical work while their own people focused on more important things. Those human engineers had spent their time learning every detail of how the planet's infrastructure worked. They had installed remote access codes in computer systems. They had placed small explosive charges in key locations. They had prepared for this moment. Now, with a few signals from the human fleet, the entire planet began shutting down. Power grids failed in carefully planned cascades. Transportation systems stopped working. Communication networks went silent. The hegemony homeworld was being crippled from within. Fleet Commander Vex watched in horror as his ships continued to explode around him. Half his fleet was already destroyed, and the other half was taking heavy damage from weapons that seemed to come from everywhere at once. "Send a message to the human fleet," he ordered. "Tell them we surrender." "But Admiral..." Kane was not interested in surrender. "Continue the attack," he ordered his ships. "Target their orbital shipyards next." The human fleet moved closer to the planet, their converted civilian ships now revealing the full extent of their modifications. Passenger liners launched waves of fighters that had been hidden in their cargo bays. Cargo ships opened up to reveal massive guns that could punch through the thickest armor. Mining vessels released swarms of robotic attackers that had been designed to strip apart asteroids. Every ship in the human fleet had been rebuilt from the inside out. The comfortable passenger cabins were now ammunition storage areas. The spacious cargo holds were now weapons platforms. The efficient mining equipment had been turned into tools of destruction. "Sir, we are receiving surrender offers from multiple enemy ships," Communications Officer Wright reported. Kane looked at the tactical display. The hegemony fleet was in ruins. Their orbital defenses were destroyed. Their planet was dark and helpless. It had taken less than 2 hours to defeat a military force that had terrorized the galaxy for decades. "Accept surrenders from any ship that powers down all weapons and opens their airlocks," Kane ordered. "But make it clear that this is not a negotiation. They will follow our orders exactly, or they will be destroyed." The battle was over, but Kane knew this was just the beginning. The hegemony had military bases on dozens of worlds. They had allies who might try to help them. Most importantly, they had shown that they were willing to commit genocide against humans. That was a crime that required a very specific kind of justice. Kane turned to his command staff. Signal all human fleets. Begin Operation Total War. Every hegemony military base, every weapons factory, every shipyard. I want them all destroyed within 1 week. The galaxy was about to learn what happened when someone tried to exterminate humanity. Captain Mike Reed stood in what used to be the hegemony's largest military academy. 6 months ago, this place had trained thousands of alien officers in the art of war. Now it was just broken concrete and twisted metal. Human demolition teams worked around him, making sure nothing useful remained. The war had not lasted long. Once humanity showed the galaxy what they were really capable of, the hegemony's advantages disappeared like smoke. Their advanced technology meant nothing when humans refused to fight fair. Their superior numbers were useless when humans attacked from everywhere at once. "Captain, we got another message from the Galactic Council," said Lieutenant Paula Kim. She held a data pad with the latest diplomatic communications. "They want us to stop our attacks immediately. They say we are being too harsh." Reed laughed, but there was no humor in it. Too harsh? Where were these complaints when the hegemony was burning our children alive? Around them, the work continued. Human engineering teams were not just defeating the hegemony military. They were systematically destroying every piece of equipment that could be used to make war. Every weapons factory was being torn down. Every military shipyard was being blown up. Every training facility was being reduced to rubble. The aliens had declared that humans were a disease that needed to be cured. Now humans were making sure the hegemony could never threaten anyone again. "Sir," Lieutenant Kim continued, "the Council is threatening to impose trade sanctions on all human colonies if we do not stop." "Let them try," Reed replied. "We have been building our own industries for months now. We do not need their trade anymore." That was one of the unexpected benefits of the war. When humans realized they were alone in the galaxy, they had stopped depending on other species for anything important. Human engineers had designed new technologies. Human factories had started making everything humans needed. Human farmers had found ways to grow more food than ever before. The war had made humanity stronger and more independent than they had ever been before. Communication device on Reed's belt started beeping. He pressed the button and heard Admiral Kane's voice. "Captain Reed, what is the status of the civilian evacuation?" "The last transport ship left this morning, sir. All hegemony civilians have been moved to safe areas on neutral worlds." Reed looked around at the empty military base. "We followed the evacuation plan exactly. No civilians were harmed during our operations." "Good," Kane replied. "We are not like them. We do not kill innocent people just because we are angry." It was an important distinction that many aliens in the galaxy could not understand. Humans had unleashed total war on their enemies while carefully protecting every hegemony civilian they could find. They had proven they could be completely ruthless and completely merciful at the same time. Human soldiers had kicked down the doors of hegemony military bases and destroyed everything inside. But those same soldiers had also built refugee camps for displaced families and made sure everyone had food and medicine. The other species watched in confused fascination as humans demonstrated what they were truly capable of when pushed beyond their limits. The same creativity that had built beautiful colonies now designed devastatingly effective weapons. The same determination that had carried them to the stars now fueled an unstoppable military campaign. "Sir," Lieutenant Kim said quietly, "we are getting surrender offers from 6 other alien species that were allied with the hegemony. They want to negotiate peace terms." Reed nodded. The message was spreading across the galaxy faster than light itself. Humanity was no longer the friendly newcomer that everyone could push around. They had tried being polite and reasonable for 50 years. When that failed, they had shown the galaxy what lay beneath their peaceful nature. Now every species in known space was being very careful about how they treated humans. No one wanted to become the next example of what happened when someone pushed humanity too far. What are they offering? Reed asked. Complete withdrawal from all disputed territories, full compensation for damages to human colonies, and they want to sign formal treaties promising never to attack human settlements again. Reed smiled grimly. 6 months ago, these same species had refused to even admit that humans deserved basic rights. They had stood by and watched while the hegemony committed genocide. Now they were begging for mercy and offering to pay for the privilege of not being destroyed. A young sergeant named Tom Park approached them. His uniform was dusty from working in the ruins, but his eyes were bright with satisfaction. "Captain, we found something interesting in the underground bunkers," Sergeant Park said. The hegemony had detailed plans for attacking every human colony in the galaxy. They were going to kill all of us, sir. Every man, woman, and child. Reed felt cold anger settle in his stomach. The evidence was clear now. This had never been about territory or resources or political power. The hegemony had planned complete genocide from the very beginning. They had wanted to wipe humanity from existence. "How detailed were the plans?" Reed asked. "Very detailed, sir. They had target lists, attack schedules, and even plans for what to do with human bodies after they killed everyone." Park's voice was tight with controlled rage. They were going to turn our colony worlds into vacation resorts for their own people. Reed looked around at the destroyed military base. Suddenly, the complete destruction did not seem like too much. It seemed like barely enough. "Send copies of those plans to Admiral Kane," Reed ordered. "And make sure every news organization in the galaxy gets them too. I want everyone to know exactly what the hegemony was planning." Within hours, the hegemony's genocide plans were being broadcast on every communication network in known space. The galaxy saw detailed maps showing which human colonies would be attacked first. They read military reports discussing the most efficient ways to kill human children. They viewed architectural plans for alien resorts built on the graves of human families. The reaction was immediate and powerful. Species that had been criticizing humanity's harsh response suddenly became very quiet. Calls for moderation and mercy disappeared overnight. Even the Galactic Council stopped demanding that humans show restraint. "Captain," Lieutenant Kim reported, "we are receiving messages from human colonies across the galaxy. They want to know when they can stop hiding and come home." Reed thought about that. For months, millions of humans had been living in fear, ready to run at a moment's notice. Children had grown up in underground shelters instead of playing in sunlight. Families had been separated by the need to spread out and avoid being easy targets. Now those same families could finally relax. The hegemony military was completely destroyed. Their allies had surrendered or switched sides. Their plans for genocide had been exposed to the entire galaxy, but Reed knew that this was not really the end. It was the beginning of something new. Humanity had been forced to abandon their peaceful nature, and they could never go back to being the naive species they used to be. The galaxy had taught humans that being civilized was not enough to survive. Now humans would make sure that lesson was never forgotten. Ambassador Helen Morgan sat in the great hall of the newly built Galactic Assembly Building on New Geneva Station. 1 year had passed since the Hegemony War ended, and today the galaxy's leaders were meeting to vote on humanity's proposal for the Universal Protection Protocols. The building itself told a story. It was constructed on the site where the hegemony's largest weapons factory used to stand, where alien engineers once designed tools of genocide. Representatives from dozens of species now debated how to prevent future wars. The human proposal goes too far, argued Counselor Rex from the Altarian Republic. His blue skin was pale with nervousness as he spoke. These new rules would change everything about how we handle conflicts in the galaxy. Morgan stood up slowly. Every conversation in the hall stopped when she began to speak. The other species had learned to pay close attention when humans talked, though no one was quite sure if it was from respect or fear. The old way of handling conflicts allowed for the planned murder of an entire species, while you argued about trade regulations, Morgan said in a calm, clear voice. That system was obviously broken. The Human Colonial Council had changed dramatically since the war began. They were no longer content to be junior partners in galactic politics. Through the simple application of superior force, they had claimed their place as a major power in the galaxy. The Terran Defense Forces now have permanent bases in 24 star systems, Morgan continued. Our rapid response fleets can reach any colony or settlement in the Outer Rim within 36 hours. Any species that attempts genocide against any other species will face humanity's complete and immediate attention. The gallery of alien representatives shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Everyone present understood exactly what humanity's complete attention meant. The former hegemony homeworld was now a living example of that concept. Its cities had been rebuilt as memorial parks for the victims of genocide. Its former military officers now worked as farmers on agricultural worlds, thinking carefully about the consequences of their past choices. Counselor Vale from the Centauri Federation raised a careful objection. But honored ambassador, such aggressive enforcement could lead to mistakes. Who will make sure the enforcers do not become tyrants themselves? Morgan's smile was cold and thin. We will watch ourselves, Counselor. We have seen what we become when we abandon our principles. We have no desire to turn into the monsters we fought against. She gestured toward a large wall behind her, covered with names. But understand this clearly. We will never again allow others to push us to that breaking point. The memorial wall contained the name of every human killed during the genocide attempts. 45,000 names from New Hope, 38,000 from Garden World, 19,000 from Silver Falls. Each name represented a life cut short by alien hatred and galactic indifference. The vote was unanimous. Every species in the assembly understood they had a simple choice: accept humanity's terms for galactic peace, or risk becoming the next demonstration of what happened when someone tested human patience. After the session ended, Admiral Kane met Morgan in the corridor outside the assembly hall. Any second thoughts about what we have become? He asked quietly. Morgan looked through the massive windows at the ships of the human defense fleet hanging in orbit around the station. Sleek warships that could cross the galaxy in days. Carrier vessels packed with fighter craft. Mobile bases that could support military operations for months without resupply. Each ship was a symbol of humanity's transformation, from peaceful colonists to galactic peacekeepers. The change had been necessary, but it was also permanent. We tried being civilized for 50 years, Morgan said. The galaxy made that impossible. Now we are something different. She turned to face Kane. History will decide if we made the right choices. Kane nodded. Maybe so. But our children will live long enough to read those history books. That is more than the hegemony was willing to offer. Outside the windows, human patrol ships moved between the lanes of civilian traffic. Cargo vessels from dozens of species carried goods throughout the galaxy under the protection of human guns. The trade routes were safer now than they had been in decades, but everyone knew the price of that safety. Humanity had given up its innocence to become the galaxy's police force. They had abandoned their dream of peaceful coexistence to become the enforcers of galactic law. In the months after the war, human colonies had flourished like never before. Without the constant threat of alien hostility, human farmers could focus on growing food instead of building defenses. Human engineers could design new technologies instead of hiding in bunkers. Human children could play in parks instead of practicing evacuation drills. The galaxy had become a safer place for everyone, but especially for humans. Dr. Martinez approached them in the corridor. She now served as the Director of Human Colonial Development, overseeing the expansion of human settlements throughout the galaxy. Ambassador, we have received requests from 12 species asking for human protection, she reported. They want U.S. to establish defense bases in their systems. Morgan was not surprised. The Universal Protection Protocols made it clear that any act of genocide would result in immediate human intervention. Smaller species that had lived in fear of their larger neighbors now saw humanity as their best hope for survival. What kind of species are asking? Morgan inquired. Mostly the ones that have been bullied by bigger powers in the past. The Tau merchants who lost 3 colonies to pirate raids last year. The Epsilon researchers whose homeworld was threatened by the hegemony. Before we stop them. The Delta miners who have been paying protection money to crime syndicates for decades. Kane smiled grimly. They want us to be their protectors. More than that, Dr. Martinez continued. They want to join the Human Colonial Council as associate members. They want to be part of our political structure instead of just accepting our protection. It was an interesting development. Before the war, no alien species would have considered joining a human organization. Humans were seen as primitive newcomers who did not understand galactic civilization. Now those same species were asking to become part of humanity's growing empire. What are the benefits for us? Morgan asked. Access to their resources, their knowledge, their technology. Plus, it gives us legitimate reasons to station fleets in their systems. We become stronger, and they become safer. Morgan considered the implications. The Human Colonial Council was evolving into something much larger than just a government for human colonies. It was becoming the foundation of a new kind of galactic civilization, one based on the principle that genocide would never be tolerated. Approve the requests, Morgan decided. But make sure they understand the requirements. Any species that joins us must follow our rules completely. No exceptions, no special cases. The galaxy was changing, and humanity was leading that change. They had learned the hard way that peaceful intentions were not enough to ensure survival. Now they were teaching that lesson to everyone else. The age of humanity's innocence was over. The age of humanity's dominance had begun, and the galaxy was becoming a very different place because of it.